So the goal is to work with the individual rather than with the couple to build a new identity of yourself. We want to get rid of the old paradigms, the old thought patterns that's holding you from being the best version of yourself so that you can sit across your partner or go through life with your partner in this new identity, this better version of you, this 2.0 version of you that will allow you to not only have a better intimate relationship with another person, but it's going to affect your work relationships, your friend relationships, your relationship with your children. So it's a win-win situation when you approach couple counseling like this because it's a guarantee success. Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I Think I Can podcast. Today, I am going to speak about relationships. Just me, myself, and I. And I just felt it was a good time to sort of maybe provide my audience with my rendition of how to approach relationships. If you either want to create a very meaningful relationship or you're in a current relationship that you feel is unstable. So I mean, very like traditionally, I feel that many therapists, um, and the way I've been trained too, is sort of to work on their core communication. And, absolutely that's important. I mean, it's something that we're not taught in school is really how to communicate. The only example we have of a relationship in our lives, coming from your family home is our parents. So, you kind of need to in some ways win the lottery and just hope that your parents have brought you up in their own solid marriage in the relationship, so that you have a good chance of building a similar relationship. Well, that's generally not the case. It's probably the case for maybe 20% of the people that come to me, right? They need to figure it out on their own. So, back to the idea of building a better communication. And I say that because that's the main complaint that comes into my room is, we don't know how to communicate. But I would argue that I think if it was that simple, I mean, I would be a rock star right now because, well, I would say more in the past because, I can hand out like a template, on how to communicate. And in fact, the Gottman method of couple counseling that I practice all the time have wonderful sort of templates and PDFs to follow from. One tool that I use is the Gottman Rappaport, you know, communication template, which is all about giving, the speaker, the listener, a certain rules to follow. When you're speaking, your partner has to listen and has to be completely attuned and engaged in your conversation. They need to ask for clarification, if they need clarification, and then it's up to them to validate their partner after they hear their whole perception and their whole story, and then validate and just sort of say, okay, can I give you my rendition of my perception of the situation? And then, the roles switch, and they they do the same thing over again. I mean, that's really the essence of communication. It's all about turn taking. It's all about, the approach, your style in terms of your body language, your tone. But really, a lot of it is being curious towards one another and really one wanting to understand the other's perspective, like having this incredible curiosity surrounding, the other person's perspective, and really wanting to get to know their partner. But that rarely happens, and it rarely happens because one person's perception of the situation is completely different from the other person's perception of the situation, and their perceptions are mainly based on past experiences that they've had. So, and this is where things completely fall apart. Unstable relationships occur because, we can think of it as being, you know, one condition, which is unstable relationships, but having many causes. So your unstable relationship is based on, it could be based on, a variety of causes. And I would say the top causes that come to mind for me is, of course, family of origin, your parental influences, your world from, you know 0 to 18. You had a lot of different influences from your parents. There's that. There's also societal norms, what you view as is normal in society. Um, whether that's through media alone, whether that's through social media, when we talk about like role playing and sharing responsibilities, and, this is the normal thing we do. Right now, I mean, it's normal for both parents to be working. It's normal for both parents to share, 50% of the responsibilities in the house. I mean, but that might not be what your relationship needs necessarily. So it could be the norms in society, it could be parental influences, it could be your personal reason for the unstable relationship. It could be that you've had past trauma, if you've had, sexual trauma, if there's a huge trust issue that you have. Um, Under family influences too, it could be that, the family, the way you were raised, you could have an attachment disorder going on, anxious, avoidant, attachment disorders. Um, what else? There could be addictions that one of the partners is struggling with. That could be one of the main causes of your unstable relationship. Um, Another one could be perfectionism is another huge one. Someone who's trying to continually be perfect is also going to struggle with, um, control, because they have to have their life perfect. So they're going to be very, very controlling in the relationship, or they have to have their relationship perfect. Um, you know, it's all it's all this idea of I can't fail. And that's actually something that I'm just like, why don't we take perfectionism and break it down even more towards body acceptance or self image. Because when we take one of the larger influences, and like we can break that down into other different parts too, and I think body acceptance, body image, it would flow under perfectionism. Like as I said, a controlling personality would flow under perfectionism. um Athleticism perhaps flows, comes from perfectionism. I really have to be the top, like you have this real competitiveness in you. You always need to win. Like when you think of it, obviously that's going to trickle down into your relationship. If your need to win every discussion, that means you're constantly justifying your actions, and you're constantly on the defense mode. Well, as John Gottman has said, defense is the first act of war. So how are you supposed to have an ideal communication, template going when you're constantly defending yourself? um Other, yeah, and maybe even career, right? If you have to be perfect all the time, that means you won't know when to stop working, because you're always in that zone of perfection. So you might not be able to, incorporate like work-life balance, and that's going to trickle down into your relationship. Um, in terms of one of the more like macro causes of unstable relationships, will move from perfection and perhaps a health condition that one of the partners has would would ultimately affect your relationship and make it unstable. It doesn't have to be that way, but if if you do have a health condition, and perhaps which would suck your energy and interrupt your sleep, if it's like for example, if it affects your hormones, if it affects your digestion, maybe you're someone who's suffering from IBS, and therefore you never really want to go out in public because you never know when you're going to have a digestion issue, so you're very self-conscious about that. Of course, that's, if you become a homebody because of a health condition, how might that, affect your relationship? Um, but I think, those to me are sort of like the main, um that I can think of right now, the main causes of an unstable relationship. And then from those main causes, as I said, you're going to have like offshoots from that. Um, so if we take, like, let's just pick one of the areas right now. Um, let's say perfectionism, and we're gonna talk about body acceptance. Let's just do that. So we like the way I work with couples is that, I mean, like I mentioned, a lot of couples come in and say we have a communication disorder, but the reason you have a communication disorder is because you're in your own head and you're not able to see your partner's perspective, and your partner is somewhat hijacked from their perspective, or their ability to kind of understand your perspective, because they're in their own head and they're living from old paradigms that, and I just went over the causes of those old paradigms. It could be, you know, parental, it could be societal, it could be an addiction, a health concern that you're struggling with. And so they have this certain identity about themselves that's not serving their relationship. So this is why, like, I'm going to pick up one of those old paradigms that you have going on in your head. Let's just say, like, especially for women, it's body image. And so they might not feel that they're good enough. And, when we think about body image, body acceptance, where did this old paradigm start with, right? There's many different ways it could have started, but it's generally, I'm going to say, the main sources of poor body acceptance would be societal norms, which I mentioned, and parental influences. Those two are, um, trauma. Trauma could be another big one, um, that I can think of. So, health concern is another one. Okay, so you see where I'm going with this. Uh, it's sort of like, they're all kind of intermixed, but for every individual, there's usually a personal reason that they have poor self-image. So the goal is to build, like, to work with the individual rather than with the couple, to build a new identity of yourself. We want to get rid of the old paradigms, the old thought patterns that's holding you from being the best version of yourself, so that you can sit across your partner or go through life with your partner, um, in this new identity, this better version of you, this 2.0 version of you, that will allow you to not only have a better intimate relationship with another person, but it is going to affect all your relationships, obviously. It's going to affect your work relationships, your friend relationships, your relationship with your children. Um, so it's a win-win situation when you approach couple counseling like this, because it's a guarantee success, because you will evolve as a person, because now you're aligning, um, this new identity in terms of, like, how you show up in the world. So, you know, where do you want to be in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, in your relationship? And if that's where you want your relationship to go, you're going to have to change some things about yourself, so that you perhaps have better boundaries surrounding, um, how you want to be treated. If particularly if you're a people pleaser, but we're going to try to just stay in the theme of body acceptance. So I just wanted to go back in terms of how this betters your relationship. We're going to, the ultimate goal is to build a new identity of yourself. And we're going to get rid of those old ways of thinking, the old thought paradigms, the old narratives that are going on in your head over and over that completely hijack you from thinking more rationally and logically. Because unfortunately, these old thought patterns are deep within your subconscious. They were, think of your subconscious as like fertile soil that has been with you since birth. Like, I mean, it's sort of like your primal brain. And once a seed, a thought, an idea, a belief gets planted in the subconscious, as you're, especially between the years of 0 to 7, because that's really when, um, you're still in that imaginative, um, suggestible state. It's like, you know, I mean, that's the part of a child that you just love, right? I mean, you just like, they wake up every morning with this like kind of awe, like, what's my day gonna be like? Um, and they're excited. Um, and, you know, it's very easy for them to find joy because they are, in the present. They're not thinking, reasoning, logistically in their frontal lobe because that part of their brain hasn't matured yet. So they're in a very suggestible state. And that's also, though, if you don't get the right belief planted in your subconscious in those very, delicate years of growth, um, mind growth, you could say, then it's it's going to just be repeated over and over in your head. So, if those beliefs about yourself are non-supportive in terms of where you want to be, how you want to think of yourself, your self-worth, your self-esteem, then we need to change those. And it is definitely possible if you focus on it, just like anything else in life, any other muscle that you have to, use and build, any other skill that you need to build, like learning a language, learning how to drive a car. I mean, it just doesn't come overnight. It takes practice. So, getting back to building a new body acceptance of yourself, um, getting rid of the old, degrading thoughts about your body or what a body should look like, or, I'm only worthy of, someone loving me if I look a certain way. Um, that's what we have to change. So, you know, this is a real thing. And so in the first part of the way I treat a relationship, I kind of, get an idea like what are your kind of, main three causes of, is it parental? Is it societal? Is it addiction? Like what's causing your inability to build a very, strong relationship? So once we figure that out, then we sort of go into the second part of, well, okay, now that we have identified what you're, how you're viewing yourself, and if your beliefs about yourself are limiting you in being the best version of yourself, then let's work on that. Let's replace those old thoughts and beliefs with better thoughts, thoughts that are actually going to allow you to align yourself with the version you want to become, right? You have to tell yourself certain words and visualize and you believe that you can be that person in order to get there. You can't, the subconscious can't keep on fighting the conscious mind over and over. Like they have to be aligned, they have to be congruent, they have to work with one another. And then you're going to see advancements in becoming a different person. So we practice that more in the third phase of my work with you. And then the second phase is establishing what I just said, you know, using specific tools that I, would say I have in my toolbox. We, depending on what your specific needs are, we use certain tools. Okay. But there's a lot of commonalities in so many women. I mean, it doesn't really matter where the source of the, it doesn't matter where it came from because we all have garbage. We all got this idea of how we should be what we should look like, and where this whole like perfectionism came from. Like, you know, it's it's incredible to think that, we feel like our body should look a certain way in order to, love ourselves. I mean, did that come from you playing with Barbies? Is that where that came from? Um, or did it come from, I don't know, things that your parents said? But no matter what the cause, it's sort of no one no one can rid this without doing the work and building that new concept of themselves. So, under that umbrella of perfectionism, where is it written in stone that we have to have perky lips or a round bum or big breasts or um, long lashes, uh, you know, long legs? Like, I mean, I don't know, like, where did this come from? But the problem is it's there right now, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. So we need to do the work. And so, for example, what that would look like is, and how this trickles down into your relationships, for example, it would be kind of something like, well, there's many different, when I think about body image and the different clients that have come to me about, having so much difficulty accepting their body and how it just, degrades your self-worth and your ability to kind of show up as a partner or even invite yourself into a partnership with someone. Like, even if you're trying to, find that person or build a relationship with someone you care for, you can't, you have a hard time being your authentic self, being who you want to be, because you're consumed with thoughts of, I'm not good enough. And it's keeping you stuck from growing in your relationship. So, what that might look like, well, I can think I've had a lot of like women athletes in my office. For example, like, I mean, everyone from, let's say, professional athletes, like, let's say, women that are elite hockey players, who are no longer playing hockey and despise their, you know, muscular legs, or, yeah. and just like feel like they're, they're not that thin model that we think we have to be in order to be feminine, for example. um when we know this is all in our heads, but it stops us from, if it stops us from loving ourselves, like how can you be confident in that relationship when you're constantly telling yourself you're not good enough because of these muscular legs that you have? And and then we're going to obviously like have a poor relationship with food because we're not eating food now because it's our body, our cells need food, our and it needs you to communicate and have a mind that works well. And when I say communicate, we need food to communicate hormones to talk to all the cells and things like that properly, and to regulate our menstrual cycle and um, make sure our thyroid works right, and maintain our metabolism. But no, we'll deny ourselves of food, thinking that we have to get down to this unrealistic size, and then over exercise, eat less and over exercise is what we've all been told over and over, when none of that is true. So it's goes back to self-acceptance of the genetics we have, number one, and number two, looking at having the relationship with food as is very differently. So, you know, I mean, we want to move from the old identity of being, you know, like not good enough in terms of our body shape. And we have to move to a more realistic identity of, this is my shape right now. And, you know, if I actually am 10 or 15 pounds overweight because of whatever, maybe I'm straight out of university and I've just spent all my time sitting down, and now I need to move more and eat better, then knowing that you will like naturally shed that weight as you start doing that, and just build a good relationship with food from there on in, that you accept yourself right now the way you are. And when you do that, you're building your confidence and you're building your self-worth, and that's so attractive to another person. It's so attractive to your girlfriends, it's so attractive to you know a boyfriend or your partner. It's they love that confidence in you, knowing that you know your ideal weight is not here right now, but you know that you will get there. So, and again, sort of accepting your genetics, it's just the way it is, but your athletic body is very, very attractive, very attractive. So that's one example I can think of. Another example that I have some women coming to me with is sort of like that parental influence that they had over the years, where unfortunately the parents might have implanted that seed of belief that food is either good or bad. you know um like, oh no, like if a parent is super conscious about nutrient density in a food, or oh, eat this type of cheese because it has this amount, this many grams of protein, don't eat that type of cheese because it has very little grams of protein. It's like, what? um so I mean, then you're going to get into orthorexia, right? You're going to have an obsession about whether a food is good for me or bad for me, instead of just, you know, in general, eating foods that are, 80% nutrient dense. It doesn't matter what the macros are, it's it's just distorted way of thinking about food. Like I just say, since when has it become like this whole like biochemistry, like conversation you're having in your mind before you sit down and have lunch? I mean, there's the extreme that way, and then there's the other end of the pendulum where, you're just going to drive through McDonald's and get a burger because you're hungry. Somebody that puts absolutely no thought in, and then someone who has, incredible awareness about the nutrient value in food. Neither way is good. In the middle is best. So, parental influences could be that. It could be perhaps when you're a young little girl, and we all go through those chubby ages. I remember it. Um, then what if you have one of your parents saying to you, uh, don't eat that. You know, you're going to gain weight if you eat that. Or stop eating desserts. Don't you want to be married someday? No man's going to want you when you're fat. Like all these crazy seeds of belief that get planted into a young child's mind when they're so suggestible like that, and they take your word for fact. I mean, that's where it begins, something so small, and then you just put that thought on repetition. It becomes a belief, and your subconscious is now full of these bad seeds, like it's like imploded with weeds, you could say. And you're wondering why your 20-year-old daughter now, you know has a completely terrible relationship with food. So there's that. um so we got to, you know understand that there's a different way of looking at food. It's not good or bad. um Another thing too is I often like have women saying, like, we had dessert every day. Like, we had dessert after every meal. So many of my good memories are, mom's like apple pie or whatever that is. And then they have this emotional attachment to food. And that's another big one, right? It's sort of, and I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. Like, I mean, you know, I mean, it's unless the parent is, drowning their kids' sorrows with M&M and ice cream every single day. Like, when the child is sad, you know, okay, oh, you fell off your bicycle, let's get an ice cream. You know, Instead of giving them the emotional connection, which is so much more powerful. But like, just the fact that you were brought up in a family that eats dessert every day doesn't mean, I think, as an adult that um having a lot of sweets every single day is your ticket to happiness. I mean, no, it's used in, just in celebration at times, and in moderation, of course. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone having dessert every single day if it's in moderation, and if it's like, more or less healthy, if there's something. I mean, or like, if it's fruit, or if it's an apple, or if it's an apple crisp. I mean, I really don't think it's going to be the source of your extra weight. I think it's how you're perceiving it as being good or bad. Um, so think about that. That's another parental influence. If I was going to think of another example, well, one that comes to my mind in working with some women that have had trauma, and especially, in my work as a hypnotherapist, this sometimes has come out too, is, it's not usually this deep, but sometimes it can be. Like, let's say a woman that was raped as a young teenager or a young child, um, and she has tremendous guilt about, dressing very pretty or being very pretty, in distorted ways of feeling like they asked for it, they attracted this, into their lives. So, on a very deep subconscious level, they have chosen to eat beyond their nutritional needs and have gained a lot of weight, dressed in baggy clothing, gained a lot of excessive weight, as a way of protecting them, in their adult life from those predators. Like, surely, a man will not be attracted to me if I carry this extra weight, and it's a way of protecting them. And I mean, that's sort of like a really deep level. I mean, uh, most of my clients are not coming to me with their inability to attract, a solid relationship, a stable relationship, because of one of those issues, but it is out there. So it can be that deep, and that they would have to go through a lot of trauma therapy for that, to process all that and develop this new identity of themselves. But to be honest with you, most of the women that come to me know that they have, this body image, body acceptance issue, and that they know where it came from, and they just want to get out of it. And so that's what we do. We work on it. We, like I said, in sort of step two or pillar two of my approach to unstable relationships, we use the tools in my toolbox, whether that's nutritional coaching, from my functional medicine background, or whether it's more, I would say it's primarily more tapping into your your growth as a person, right? So it could be using more spiritual, emotional, mental growth, and tapping into all those skills, and realizing the power that you have to move up developmentally in all those three, you know, areas: emotional, mental, and spiritual. And using tools such as visualization and, um, imagination. We're going to go back to when you were a child again, and how you were able to imagine being in, a different place, a different time, and using your goal of, this is my new concept of self, and this is my new identity, this is where my macro goal is. So, Luella, show me the micro goals to get to my macro goal. Because right now I can visualize it, I can see it in my mind's eye, I can feel the way the feeling it gives me when I think of this way, imagine this way, is it brings me so much joy and contentment and, peacefulness. And you focus your thoughts and your intention on that goal as part of your daily practice. You use different words that attach to that imagery in order to make it more, um, like, solid in your subconscious. Because what you're telling your subconscious when you do that because remember, your subconscious is like a child. It's a very suggestible state of being. So, I'd say practice visualization and affirmations, and positive, like, self-talk when you either sort of wake up in the morning, because you're still in that sleepy kind of drowsy state. And that's why a lot of people say, they do their meditation first thing in the morning. It also really sets your day off right. Um, to make sure you don't go into that thinking, planning, programming, logistic, reasoning part of your mind, and just, allow that subconscious mind to still sort of gauge you where you want to go. Is you do it in the morning, or another option is to do it just before you go to bed, because again, you're getting into that very your conscious mind is shutting off as you go to sleep. Your conscious mind shuts off as you go to sleep. Your subconscious is always awake 24 hours. And your conscious mind is the the part of your mind that's is sort of the gatekeeper to your subconscious. And it says, I am going to accept this belief, or I am not going to accept this belief. So when you're younger, um, you accepted everything, like I said, because the conscious mind wasn't yet matured. And so unfortunately, these ideations of, or what your body image should be. I should say ideation, something didn't sound right there, of what your body should be, were planted at a very, very young age. And, darn it all, now I got to get that out. I got to pull that weed out and start accepting myself. And in doing that, your relationships are going to change. Okay. So if I would think about another, one of my clients that I did this work with, it would be in the example of, well, obviously, like, there's some women that come to me with eating disorders as well. Like, yeah, as I said, kind of food relationship issues, but on the severe side of that is bulimia, anorexia, um, where they're starving themselves, or they're purging all the food that they did eat that day. So you can see the importance of building a new identity, because I mean, now you've brought it to the level of it becoming a health condition. And um, you know where it can become very, very dangerous, right? So we don't want to go, into rehab for something like that. We want to be able to um, build this new image of a beautiful body at a very young age, so we don't feel like our body has to be a certain age. I mean, our body doesn't have to be a certain way in order to be loved, to be accepted, to have meaningful relationships. Like, I keep on saying, like, nothing is more attractive, in a partnership than, seeing the confidence in somebody else. I mean, I'm mainly talking to women here, but I mean, even in a man, right? I mean, a man who's confident about their body, their looks, and, alongside of that, have a wonderful personality. There's nothing that's more attractive in my eyes. So that's why there's so many books on confidence out there, because everybody wants it. But I think that's the other problem with these self-help books. It's sort of like they're missing the piece of doing it. And that's why, a program like mine is so important, because I'm going to hold you accountable in the doing and the being, and let's let's put the thinking on hold, because right now with all the self-help books, it's like you're thinking too much about it, but you're not doing anything about it. So, but with the tools of, like I mentioned, visualization and, you know, self-talk, um, using meditation perhaps as well can be very, very effective if you can quiet the mind and become less in your head, sort of thing. um yeah, nutritional counseling if we need that. um but working on you know the 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 emotional, spiritual, and mental capacities that are there, you know they it's just that maybe you thought that after 25 years you didn't have to grow anymore as a person. It's strange the way that we look at children and we think about, all the developmental stages that they go through. And yet, it seems like when our brain matures, whether, for a woman that's more like 22, 23, and men it's a year or so later, that we're done. How is that even possible? Like, how sad is that? We're done? We're done growing? You know, we're done growing spiritually, we're done growing emotionally, we're done growing mentally. Like, how clear were you thinking at 22? Think about it. You were probably living on Doritos, Cokes, and honeycomb cereal for dinner, and you're telling me that you're at the prime of your life in your thought processes. uh, Probably not. So yes, wisdom is knowledge, but also it's a lot more than that. Like, it's experience definitely brings you wisdom, but also, being curious and wanting to grow as an individual. So let's be um adult like here in our wisdom, and realize that we all have the potential to grow, and use our connection with nature, like in terms of the spiritual realm, maybe getting outside of nature and knowing that there's a higher source of power, or tapping into your religion a little bit, deeper, um, and using that to help, you be guided, right? A lot of the tools that I use is sort of helping you to also surrender, to be guided, to quiet the mind and listen to what your heart is really telling you, to be a master of, your intuition and your instinct, rather, than a lot of women, will tell me, like, you know don't tell me to eat intuitively, because I didn't even know what that means. But after, doing such a program with me, you're going to able you're going to be able to know better what you want, because your mind will be quieter, and you're going to relax into it, you're going to surrender into it, you're going to understand energetics a lot better, you know um reading other people's energy, and knowing whether or not, like, they're giving you the energy that you need, or are you being repelled by their energy. Using, like, feminine and masculine, um energetics. Are you too much on your on your male side? Are you the corporate, like, woman that checks off all the boxes, and then is struggling coming home and putting your mom hat on and being more the nurturer and the caregiver, and if you are much more on your masculine side than you are on your feminine side, where did that, like, again, where did that seed get planted? Who told you you had to, you know be the corporate star? If I mean, if it but if in fact that feeds your soul, then great. But I'm going to argue with you that there's another side of you that needs some nurturing as well, some self-care, etc. So, um, yeah, I think we're coming to the hour, and I don't want to make this too long, but I just wanted to let you know that there's a different way of doing relationships. And what's so exciting about this way is that it's a guarantee success, because you're either going to connect deeper with your partner, or and deeper with your friends, and deeper with anybody in your life, or you're going to, have some light shit on your relationship and realize this might not be for me. And that's okay too. So, but you, in the end, are more aligned to your genuine, authentic self, the person you always were, the person, that you love, you honor, you respect, and, nothing is more powerful than that. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of share that with you guys today. So if you like the podcast, I mean, this is something, of course, I would really appreciate, to let me know, whether it's commenting on social media, um, or sending me a message. You can always, you know, contact me directly through Instagram, or um, YouTube, or Messenger and Facebook, or send me an email. It's all on my website, luellayoung.com. And until I see you again or speak to you again next week, have a great week. Bye-bye. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.